The battlefields for this game are Trifarian Warcamp for me, and I am playing Darius, Hand of Noxus, and Obelisk of Power for Stafford, who is playing Misfortune, Bounty Hunter. I am going to mulligan a Vayne and a Dangerous Duo, and Stafford will mulligan a Carnivorous Snapvine and a Dazzling Aurora. I am going first, and because of Obelisk of Power, I will channel 3, and then I'll draw for turn. I'll get started by exhausting 3 to play a Dangerous Duo into my base exhausted, and then I'll pass the turn to Stafford. Because he is going second, and thanks to Obelisk of Power, Stafford will channel 4, and then he'll draw for turn. He'll get started with every Ramp player's dream scenario, going second with Obelisk of Power, straight into a Catalyst of Aeons to channel 2, and then, with nothing else to do, he'll pass the turn to me. I'll channel 2, separate my runes, and then I'll draw for turn. I'll get started by moving my Dangerous Duo into Trifarian Warcamp, make it do a front flip, and then I'll score my first point. I'll follow that up by exhausting 4 runes and recycling 1 Fury rune to play a Vayne into my base, and then, with nothing else to do, I'll pass the turn to Stafford. Stafford will channel 2, and now at double my rune count, he'll draw for turn. Knowing he only needs 9 runes next turn for his Dazzling Aurora, he'll get things started by exhausting 4 runes and recycling a Chaos rune to play his Misfortune Buccaneer into his base exhausted. He will then explain that his Misfortune is very afraid of Vayne, and, with nothing else to do, he'll pass the turn to me. Right here I should have scored a point for holding Trifarian Warcamp, but we never noticed, so it just becomes accepted game state. I'll get things started by tumbling my Vayne into Obelisk of Power to score another point, and wanting to make sure he reaches his reading goal for the month, Stafford decides to read my Vayne. I do choose to use Vayne's ability, exhausting 1 rune and returning her to my hand. I will then exhaust 4 runes and recycle 1 Fury rune to play the Vayne back into my base exhausted, and finally I'll remember to awaken my Dangerous Duo. Not wanting to lose my Dangerous Duo for free to Stafford's Misfortune, I'll move it back to my base, and then, with nothing else to do, I'll pass the turn to Stafford, who's definitely not about to windmill slam a Dazzling Aurora. Stafford will channel 2, and then he'll draw for turn. He'll get things started by exhausting 9 runes and recycling 2 body runes for a mystery card. And to everyone's surprise, that mystery card is Dazzling Aurora. He will follow that up by moving his Misfortune Buccaneer into Trifarian Warcamp to score his first point, and then he'll move to his end phase, triggering Dazzling Aurora. And right off the top, he'll rip a Mind Splitter, allowing him to look at my hand and force me to discard 1 card. He chooses to play the Mind Splitter into Trifarian Warcamp alongside his Misfortune. After fulfilling his weekly reading requirements, Stafford chooses to send my back-to-back to my trash, and then, having bullied me enough, he'll pass the turn to me. I'll channel 2, and then I'll draw for turn. I'll get things started by exhausting 1 Order rune to float 1 energy and recycling it to play a Seal of Unity. I will follow that up by using the 1 floating energy, exhausting 3 more runes, using my Darius' Legend ability, and recycling 1 Fury rune to play my partner Darius Executioner into my base. Because it's the second card I've played this turn, it will ready itself and gain 2 might. I'll follow that up by slamming my Vayne and Darius into Trifarian Warcamp for a showdown with Stafford's Mind Flayer and Misfortune. This will kill both of Stafford's units, and he will choose to kill my Darius in return. I will conquer Trifarian Warcamp and score another point. Then I will immediately follow that up by moving Dangerous Duo into Obelisk of Power to score another point. And with nothing else to do, I'll pass the turn to Stafford to see what other giant cards he's going to slam onto the board. Stafford will channel 2, and then he'll draw for turn. He'll get started by exhausting 7 runes and recycling 2 body runes to play an Anivia into his base exhausted. He'll follow that up by exhausting 1 rune to play a Gust, putting my Dangerous Duo back into my hand. And it's quite a windy day because he plays another Gust to put my Vayne back in my hand. And removing both of those from battlefield to stop me from scoring might be just the tempo swing he needs to win this game. After that, he'll move to his end phase, a little less lucky than last time. He'll get a Carnivorous Snapvine, which he will play into his base exhausted, and then he'll pass the turn to me. I'll channel 2, and then I'll draw for turn. I'll get started by exhausting 5 runes and recycling a Fury rune to play a Draven into my base exhausted. Because I have 4 points, my Draven will have 7 might. I will follow that up by using my Darius' Legend ability and exhausting 1 rune to play my Trifarian Glory Seeker into my base exhausted, which will buff itself because of its Legion ability, and then, with nothing else to do, I'll pass the turn to Stafford. Stafford will channel 2, and then he'll draw for turn. Finally ready for the Reanimator portion of Misfortune Reanimator, Stafford will exhaust 8 runes and recycle 2 Chaos runes to play a Soul Corcher into his base exhausted. And because I might have too much fun if I get to keep my cards in my hand, Stafford will bring back a Mind Splitter using the Soul Gorger, recycling 2 Chaos Runes to pay its power cost. No longer needing to hit a reading requirement, Stafford will go ahead and just discard my Vane. He will then fly his Anivia by Trifarian Warcamp to put it at Obelisk of Power and score a point, and then he'll follow that up by moving his Snapvine into Trifarian Warcamp to score another point. He will then move to his Instep, and because no one can have enough Ice Phoenixes, the Dazzling Aurora will play an Anivia into his base Exhausted, and with a whole bunch of scary units on his board, he'll pass the turn to me. I'll channel 2, and then I'll draw for turn. I'll get started by using my Seal of Unity to pay for another Seal of Unity. Then I'll follow that up by exhausting 2 runes and using my Darius' Legend ability to play Dangerous Duo into my base Exhausted, which will buff one of my units by 2 might thanks to its Legion ability. I'll choose to buff my Draven, and then I'll move it into Obelisk of Power for a showdown with Stafford's Anivia. My 9 might Draven will be enough to take out his 8 might Anivia, conquering Obelisk of Power and scoring another point. I'll finish up my turn by moving the Trifarian Glory Seeker into Obelisk of Power. Because Stafford knows I have 2 Grand Stratagems in my hand, this might be enough to keep him from trying to take the Obelisk of Power from me. And then I'll pass the turn to Stafford. Stafford will score a point for holding Trifarian Warcamp, then he'll channel 2 and draw for turn. He'll get started by exhausting 6 runes and recycling 1 body rune to play Gentleman's Duel. It should be noted that when we were going over the deck list for this deck, he swore he just wanted this to be challenge, but challenge would not have worked in this situation. He will have the Gentleman's Duel buff his Anivia by 3 might and have it fight my Draven. And with no reactions to save my Draven, he will lose this Gentleman's Duel. He will follow this up by moving his Anivia into Obelisk of Power, triggering his Anivia's when attacking ability. The Anivia's ability will deal 3 damage to my Trifarian Glory Seeker, allowing Stafford to conquer Obelisk of Power and score another point. And with nothing else to do, Stafford will move to his end phase to see what new cool toy he'll pull off the top of his deck. Fortunately for me, and unfortunately for him, it's just another Carnivorous Snapvine, which he'll play up there with his other Snapvine, and pass the turn to me. I'll channel 2, then I'll make my runes do some cool little tricks, take a second to ponder life, and draw for turn. I'll get started by exhausting both of my Seals of Unity and 4 runes to play Spectral Matron into my base Exhausted. The Matron will bring back a Trifarian Glory Seeker, who will buff itself thanks to its Legend ability. And next, I'll follow that up by using my Darius' Legend ability and exhausting 1 rune to play Daring Poro into my base Exhausted. And having amassed an army ready for my double Grand Stratagem next turn, I'll pass the turn to Stafford. Stafford will score a point for holding Trifarian Warcamp and another one for holding Obelisk of Power. Then he'll channel 2 and he'll draw for turn. After what the VOD shows to be 3 minutes of deliberation, Stafford decides to move his Anivia back to base. After a 3-minute and 9-second discussion on the math of my Grand Stratagems, he will move the Mind Splitter into Trifarian Warcamp, which he will then follow up by exhausting 8 runes and recycling 2 Chaos Runes to play Soul Gorger into his base Exhausted, using its ability to bring back an Anivia from his trash Exhausted, only having to pay its power cost, recycling 2 body runes. And then, because all of his giant scary units are scared of my Poro, he'll move to his end phase to trigger Dazzling Aurora. With an obscene amount of luck, the Dazzling Aurora will hit a Mind Splitter, ripping one of my Grand Stratagems out of my hand. I'll channel 2, and then, as slowly as possible, I will draw for turn. Finally drawing my Baited Hook, but too excited to do it in the right order, I'll play my Baited Hook and exhaust 3 runes. Next, I'll move my Daring Poro, into Obelisk of Power to score another point. I will follow that up by using my Darius' Legend ability and exhausting one of my Seals of Unity, sacrificing my Daring Poro for Baited Hook. The hook will find me a Faithful Manufactor, playing it into my base Exhausted, and the Manufactor's ability will create a Recruit. I will follow that up by exhausting 6 runes, one of my Seals of Unity, and recycling 2 Order runes to play my other Grand Stratagem. This will buff my units up enough to at least force Stafford off of Trifarian Warcamp and score me another point. And with nothing else to do, I'll pass the turn to Stafford and his army of scary monsters. Stafford will channel 2, and then he'll draw for turn. He'll get started by moving both Anivias into Trifarian Warcamp to slaughter my Dangerous Duo. But because he hasn't scored both battlefields this turn, he can't win the game off that, so he'll draw a card. And then he'll move the Mind Splitter that got rid of my Grand Stratagem into Obelisk of Power, scoring his 8th point and winning the game. That's all for now. Hope you enjoyed.